You're still awake?" Emily's voice startled me as she walked through the door. I glanced at the clock. 11:47 p.m. Her hair was slightly tousled, her makeup still perfect, and she had that faint scent of expensive perfume she only wore to work. "Barely," I replied, trying to keep my tone light. "Noah asked for you before bed. He had a big story about his soccer game, but I told him you were working late." "Again?" Her smile faltered for just a second. "I feel bad, Michael. It's just Andrew keeps giving me these huge projects. You know how it is trying to prove yourself in a new job." She dropped her purse on the counter and started rummaging through it. "Do I?" I asked, my voice quieter now. "You've been working late every night this week. And last week. I feel like I don't even see you anymore." She paused, her hands freezing mid-search. "It's temporary," she said, avoiding my eyes. "Once I establish myself, things will settle down." "Will they?" I asked, standing and leaning against the counter across from her. "Because it doesn't feel like it. Noah misses you." "I miss you." Emily sighed, her shoulders stiffening as she finally met my gaze. "Michael, I'm doing this for us. For our family." But her words rang hollow. That was the moment I first felt it. That invisible wall between us, the one I couldn't figure out how to tear down. I didn't bring it up again that night, but the conversation lingered like smoke. Something was off, but I couldn't put my finger on it. Over the next few weeks, Emily's behavior continued to shift in small, unsettling ways. It wasn't just the late nights anymore. She started dressing differently. Sleek pencil skirts, fitted blouses, and heels she hadn't touched in years. Her new workout routine also caught my attention. "Just trying to stay fit," she said with a smile when I asked. I wanted to believe her. She was beautiful, confident, glowing even, but not in a way that felt like it had anything to do with me. One Saturday, I was out mowing the lawn when Josh, my neighbor and best friend, walked over. "Man, you've been putting in some serious dad energy lately," he joked, gesturing to my grass-stained sneakers and faded t-shirt. I laughed. Someone's got to keep the fort running. Emily's been busy with work, so it's just me and Noah most nights. Josh raised an eyebrow. "Still working late with that boss of hers?" "Andrew something?" "Blake," I said, nodding. "Yeah, he's got her on a million projects. She's excited about it, though, so I can't complain." Josh frowned, glancing back at his own house, where his son was kicking a soccer ball around. "Don't let her burn herself out, man. Or you, for that matter. People who work that hard for someone else, well, let's just say it's not always about the paycheck." I brushed it off, but his words stuck with me. That night, as I cleaned up after dinner, Emily's phone buzzed on the counter. She was upstairs with Noah, reading him a bedtime story. I glanced at the screen, not meaning to pry, but the preview caught my eye. "Andrew Blake, you're the only one who makes this job worthwhile. Let's talk more Monday." My stomach dropped. I knew I shouldn't look further, but something in me, call it instinct or fear, demanded I do. I swiped up and scrolled through their messages. They weren't explicit, not yet, but the tone was unmistakable. There were jokes, compliments, and subtle hints that carried more weight than I wanted to admit. I locked her phone and set it back down, trying to calm my racing thoughts. When she came downstairs, smiling, I forced myself to act normal. I told myself it could still be nothing. Maybe he was just a charismatic boss who blurred professional lines a little too much. But deep down, I knew better. The storm finally broke on a Friday night. Emily was supposed to be home by 8 p.m. to watch a movie with Noah and me, something we hadn't done as a family in months. By 9:30, the popcorn had gone cold, and Noah had fallen asleep on the couch. I tucked him in a bed, kissed his forehead, and told him I'd let his mom know he missed her. But Emily wasn't answering her phone. At first, I told myself it was fine. Maybe she was stuck at work or caught up in traffic. But with every passing minute, my worry twisted into something darker. By the time the clock hit 11 p.m., I wasn't worried anymore. I was angry. She walked in at 11:15, the sound of her heels clicking on the hardwood floor echoing through the quiet house. She looked startled to see me sitting in the living room, waiting. "You're still up?" she asked, her tone light, almost casual. "Where were you?" I asked, keeping my voice calm, but firm. Emily hesitated, fiddling with the strap of her purse. "I told you we had a deadline. Andrew needed me to go over some campaign details. At 11 p.m. on a Friday, I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. Emily, come on. Do you really think I'm that naive? Her expression shifted, defensive now. Michael, I don't know what you're insinuating, but I'm working my ass off to support this family. Do you have any idea how much pressure I'm under? I know exactly what you're under, I snapped, my voice rising despite my effort to stay calm. And I think his name is Andrew Blake. She froze, her face pale. For a moment, neither of us said anything. Then, quietly, she asked, "What are you talking about?" I pulled out her phone. She had left it charging on the counter when she came in, and I'd spent the last 10 minutes going through her messages again, digging deeper. I read one aloud. "You looked amazing in that dress tonight. Can't stop thinking about you. Care to explain that, Emily?" Her mouth opened and closed like she was searching for the right lie, but couldn't find it. Finally, she sighed, her shoulders slumping. "Michael, it's not what you think." I stood up, towering over her now. "Then what is it?" "Because it looks like you've been spending more time with him than you have with your own family. It looks like you've been lying to me, Emily." Her eyes filled with tears, but I wasn't moved. "It's not serious," she whispered. "It's just a distraction. I never meant for it to get out of hand." "A distraction?" I echoed, my voice dripping with disbelief. "From what? From me? From Noah? No, from myself," she shouted, her voice cracking. "From this rut we've been in. I needed to feel alive again, Michael. I needed to feel wanted." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I took a step back, shaking my head. "And you couldn't talk to me about that? You couldn't let me in instead of running to him?" She wiped at her eyes, mascara smudging beneath them. "I'm sorry," she said, but the words felt hollow. "I didn't want to hurt you. It's over now, I promise. It was a mistake." "Is it over?" I asked, crossing my arms. "Because if it's over, why did he text you an hour ago asking if you made it home safe?" Emily flinched like I'd slapped her. She didn't respond, and that silence told me everything I needed to know. "I want the truth." "Emily," I said, my voice steady but cold. "All of it. Right now." She sat down on the couch, her head in her hands. Slowly, haltingly, she began to speak. It started with late-night brainstorming sessions and coffees. Then came the dinners after work, where they talked about more than just campaigns. And finally, the affair, the lunches at cheap motels, the stolen kisses in parking lots. She swore it wasn't love, that it didn't mean anything, but the look on her face told me it meant enough for her to risk everything. Look on her face told me it meant enough for her to risk everything. When she finished, I just stood there staring at her. The woman I had built my life with, the mother of my child, the person I thought I could trust more than anyone, had become a stranger to me. "You need to leave," I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. Her head shot up. "Michael, get out." She didn't argue. She grabbed her purse, her keys, and walked out the door without another word. As the silence settled over the house, I sank onto the couch, my head in my hands. I didn't know what hurt more, the betrayal, or the realization that the life I thought I had was already gone. The first few days after Emily walked out were surreal. The house felt emptier, even though Noah's presence kept it from being completely silent. I still woke up at the usual time, still made breakfast, still packed his lunch for school, but everything else felt wrong. Noah asked about her, of course. "Where's Mommy?" he said at breakfast the next morning, his wide, innocent eyes staring at me as he poked at his cereal. "She's staying at a friend's house for a little while," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I couldn't bear to tell him the truth. "Not yet. Maybe not ever." "When's she coming back?" he asked, and I felt my chest tighten. "I don't know, buddy. Soon, I hope." He seemed to accept that, at least for the moment, and I kissed his head as I walked him to the car for school. But as I watched him disappear through the front doors of the building, a wave of anger rolled through me. How could she do this? To me, to Noah, to everything we had built together? By the third day, I couldn't stand the uncertainty anymore. I needed answers, real ones, not the hollow excuses Emily had given me that night. I called Josh. "She's staying at Megan's," he said without preamble when he answered. It didn't surprise me. Megan, her best friend, was always her go-to when she needed a shoulder to cry on. Josh sighed. "Look, man, I know this is messy, but you need to think about your next move. You can't just sit there waiting for her to figure out what she wants." I know, I said, rubbing my temples. But what am I supposed to do? I can't throw her out of Noah's life. He loves her, and if I file for divorce, she'll fight me for custody. You're probably right, he said. But that doesn't mean you have to let her walk all over you either. Start protecting yourself. Gather evidence, talk to a lawyer, whatever you need to do. Later that week, I got an unexpected text from Rebecca Blake, Andrew's wife. I didn't know her well, but I'd seen her around town, always looking polished and put together. I hesitated for a moment before responding, unsure of what she wanted. When we met at a local coffee shop, Rebecca didn't waste any time. I'm sorry for ambushing you, she said, stirring her tea. But I figured you'd want to know the truth about Andrew and Emily. I already know the truth, I said flatly. She told me. Rebecca's smile was tight, almost bitter. Did she tell you how long it's been going on? Or how many other women Andrew has done this to before her? That caught me off guard. What? He's a serial cheater, she said, her voice calm but cutting. This isn't his first affair, Michael. It's just the latest in a long line of them. He has a type, smart, ambitious women who are vulnerable enough to fall for his charm. And then, when he's bored, he moves on to the next one. I felt a sick twist in my stomach. So, what? You just let this happen? She let out a sharp laugh. It's not that simple. I have 2 kids, Michael. Leaving him would mean a public spectacle, financial ruin, and dragging my children through the mud. I've been playing the long game, waiting for the right time to act. And now's the time? I asked, skeptical. Let's just say I have my reasons, she said, her eyes hard. I'm willing to help you, Michael. But in return, I need your help too. What kind of help? I asked, leaning back in my chair. Rebecca hesitated, then leaned forward, her voice low. We need to make sure they can't worm their way out of this. Andrew and Emily have been playing with fire for months, but it's time they feel the consequences. Together, we can gather enough proof to expose them, legally, socially, however we need to. I didn't like the idea of teaming up with Rebecca. It felt too calculated, too messy. But as I thought about Noah, about the life I wanted to protect, I realized she might be my best chance at getting the leverage I needed. Fine, I said after a long pause. But if we're doing this, it's about protecting my son. Nothing else. Agreed, she said, holding out her hand. I shook it, sealing a pact I wasn't sure I'd ever forgive myself for making. Over the next week, Rebecca and I worked together to gather evidence. She shared texts and emails she'd intercepted from Andrew, while I installed a small voice recorder in Emily's purse, hoping to catch her discussing their affair. It felt dirty, sneaky, but I couldn't afford to play fair anymore. Not when so much was at stake. Then one evening, I got a message from Rebecca. It was a photo of Andrew and Emily at a restaurant, their heads close together, laughing. The timestamp was from earlier that night. It wasn't just a mistake. It wasn't just a phase. They were still seeing each other, still lying to both of us. Something inside me snapped. They wanted to play dirty? Fine. I could do dirty too. By the time I got that photo of Emily and Andrew from Rebecca, I had crossed a line I didn't think I'd ever even approach. The anger and humiliation were no longer enough to stop me from imagining what I might do next. I didn't just want to expose them. I wanted them to suffer. Andrew Blake was the key. Emily's affair with him wasn't some random fling. He'd seduced her, manipulated her, and thrown our family into chaos without a second thought. It wasn't enough for me to simply catch him in the act. I wanted to destroy him from the inside out. I started researching. Late at night, after Noah was asleep, I sat in front of my laptop and dug into Andrew's life. It didn't take long to find his weaknesses. He prided himself on his flashy lifestyle. Cigars, fine whiskey, expensive dinners. He flaunted it on social media like a man trying to prove something. And that was when an idea began to take shape. I didn't want to just take him down. I wanted to cripple him. Physically. Permanently. I found what I needed online, a pharmaceutical-grade compound designed to induce erectile dysfunction in small, undetectable doses. The reviews from discreet buyers on the dark corners of the internet were glowing, each one thanking the seller for their miraculous solution to complicated problems. I knew it was insane. I knew it was dangerous. But after everything he had taken from me, I convinced myself it was justified. I ordered it under a fake name and had it shipped to a nearby P.O. box. When the tiny vial arrived, It was surprisingly innocuous. A clear liquid in a sealed dropper bottle, harmless looking but potent. I enlisted Rebecca's help. She was eager to see Andrew taken down, and she knew his habits better than anyone. He has a bottle of Glenlivet 21 in his office, she told me during one of our late-night meetings. He pours himself a glass every Friday after work. That's your chance. We plan meticulously. Rebecca offered to distract Andrew's secretary under the guise of needing some papers signed. That would give me the window I needed to slip into his office. The night of the plan, I was nervous but determined. I walked into Andrew's firm wearing a suit and carrying a clipboard, pretending to be from a courier service. Rebecca did her part perfectly, drawing the secretary out of the office with some fabricated paperwork crisis. When I slipped into Andrew's office, my heart was pounding, but I moved quickly. The bottle of Glenlivet was exactly where Rebecca said it would be, sitting on a shelf behind his desk. I unscrewed the top and carefully added 10 drops of the compound, watching the liquid disappear seamlessly into the whiskey. By the time I left the office, my hands were shaking, but I felt a grim sense of satisfaction. I wasn't just taking back control. I was leveling the playing field. It didn't take long for the effects to show. The following week, Rebecca texted me with the update. Rebecca, he's losing it. Complained about stress issues to his assistant. This is perfect. The second week, Emily came home looking frustrated. She'd been spending more and more time with Andrew, despite her promises to end it. But that night, something was clearly wrong. What's with the mood? I asked casually, not looking up from my laptop. Nothing, she snapped, dumping her purse on the counter. Work's just been stressful. Andrew's not so charming anymore. I couldn't help myself. She shot me a glare, but didn't answer. That was all the confirmation I needed. By the third week, Rebecca confirmed that Andrew had made an appointment with a specialist. He's desperate, she said, barely able to contain her glee. His ego can't handle it. But something unexpected happened. As Andrew's problems escalated, Emily began to change too. She started coming home earlier, spending more time with Noah, even trying to engage with me. One night, as we sat across the table from each other, she looked at me with a strange mix of guilt and longing. Michael, she said softly, I know I've been terrible to you. To us. I want to fix this. I want to fix us. I stared at her, unable to hide my disbelief. Now you want to fix things? After everything? Tears welled in her eyes. I've made so many mistakes, and I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I miss you. I miss our family. I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to believe her, to cling to the life we'd once had. But the other part of me, the one that had spent weeks plotting and executing revenge, knew it was too late. Emily's sudden about-face should have felt like a breakthrough. But to me, it was just another layer of the betrayal. She had already chosen Andrew over me, over Noah, over everything we had built together. And now what? Because her lover wasn't delivering anymore, she wanted to crawl back and pretend nothing had happened? No, she didn't get to rewrite the story to suit her needs. That night, as I lay in bed, I stared at the ceiling, her words echoing in my head. I want to fix us? Us? There was no us left to fix. The next morning, I knew exactly what I needed to do. It wasn't enough to leave Andrew humiliated. I wanted him ruined. And Emily? She would learn what it felt like to be left with nothing. Over the following week, I ramped up my efforts. Rebecca and I worked tirelessly to gather more dirt on Andrew and Emily, recording everything we could. Texts, phone calls, even a few whispered conversations Emily had in our kitchen when she thought I was asleep upstairs. One night, I placed a small voice recorder in her purse before she left for work. The next morning, I retrieved it and listened. What I heard made my blood boil. Emily's voice, low and teasing. Don't worry, Andrew. I'm still here, even if your stress issues persist. It's not like Michael's an option anymore. Andrew's response was muffled, but the tone was clear, dismissive, controlling. He laughed, saying something about how she should be grateful for the opportunity he'd given her. Opportunity? I clenched my fists so hard my nails dug into my palms. He wasn't just some charming flirt who'd crossed a line. He was a predator, and Emily had let herself become his willing accomplice. I sent the audio to Rebecca, who called me immediately. Michael, this is it, she said. This is the kind of leverage we need. We can take this public, blow up his career. I hesitated. A public scandal would certainly damage Andrew, but it wouldn't destroy him the way I wanted. And it might hurt Noah, too. Drag our family through the kind of gossip I wasn't sure he could escape from. No, I said finally. Not yet. I have a better idea. The next time Emily left the house for a meeting, I followed her. I kept my distance, tailing her car to a hotel just outside town. Sure enough, she met Andrew in the lobby, where they exchanged a brief kiss before heading upstairs. I snapped photos from my car. They weren't explicit, but they were enough. That night, Emily came home early again, trying to play the part of the repentant wife. She made dinner, helped Noah with his homework, even curled up next to me on the couch as if we were still a happy family. "Why are you doing this?" I asked, breaking the silence. She looked up at me, startled. "Doing what?" "Pretending," I said, "acting like things can go back to the way they were." "I'm not pretending," she said softly. "I know I've hurt you, Michael. I know I don't deserve another chance, but I'm trying. For us. For Noah. For us," I repeated, my voice bitter. "Was that what you were thinking about when you kissed Andrew in that hotel lobby tonight?" Her face went pale, and her fork clattered onto her plate. "Well, what are you talking about?" I stood, pulling out my phone and showing her the photos. "This," I said, "this is what you've been doing while I've been here raising our son, cleaning up your mess." She stared at the screen, her eyes wide with panic. "Michael, it's not what it looks like." "Stop," I snapped. "Just stop. I don't want to hear any more of your lies. You're not sorry. You're just scared because you know it's all about to come crashing down." The next day, I took the photos, the recordings, and everything Rebecca and I had gathered to a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, my sister Linda. She didn't even bother hiding her anger as I laid it all out for her. "Emily's screwed," she said, flipping through the files. "But Michael, if we take this to court, she'll fight back. She won't just roll over and let you take Noah." "I'm not giving her the chance," I said. "I want full custody, and I want her out of the house. Can we make that happen?" Linda nodded slowly. "It's possible, but it won't be easy. She'll come after you for alimony, maybe even try to claim emotional abuse. Are you ready for that?" I thought of Noah, of the way his face lit up when I picked him up from school, of how much he deserved a stable, happy life. "I'm ready," I said. That evening, I handed Emily the papers. Her face crumpled as she read them, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Michael, please," she sobbed. "Don't do this. Don't take Noah away from me. You did this to yourself," I said coldly. "You chose Andrew. You chose this life. Now you can live with the consequences." She begged and pleaded, but I didn't relent. For the first time in months, I felt like I had control again. Emily moved out 2 weeks later. She didn't fight it, not at first. The weight of the evidence I'd handed over to Linda, and the certainty that her affair with Andrew was no longer a secret, had broken her. She spent the first few days pleading with me to reconsider, to think about Noah, to think about us. But every tear-streaked apology only steeled my resolve. By the time she left, our house felt quieter, emptier, but cleaner. Noah was resilient, more than I expected. I told him the truth in the gentlest terms I could manage. "Mommy and Daddy need some time apart, but we both love you very much." He cried, of course, but I promised him that no matter what, he would always have me. And that was a promise I intended to keep. Rebecca's timing was perfect. While I handled Emily, she made sure Andrew's downfall was swift and public. The recordings I'd given her were enough to start the fire. Using her contacts, she leaked a portion of the audio to a local journalist. A scathing piece that painted Andrew as a predatory boss who exploited his employees. Rebecca's name wasn't mentioned, but the article made it clear that sources close to him were finally speaking out. Then came the fallout. Andrew's partners at the firm issued a public statement distancing themselves from his actions. Clients began pulling their accounts, unwilling to be associated with the scandal. Within a month, Andrew had been forced to resign. But that wasn't the end. The poison I'd slipped into his whiskey was subtle, its effects growing worse over time. By now, it wasn't just stress issues. Andrew had gone to multiple specialists, all of whom were stumped by his condition. His frustration and humiliation grew with each passing day, and Emily, faced with the reality of a man who could no longer offer her the lifestyle or the excitement she craved, began pulling away from him. Rebecca kept me updated, her messages dripping with satisfaction. Rebecca, he's a wreck. Cancel the dinner party because he couldn't handle the embarrassment. I don't think he's leaving his house anymore. Me good? Let him rot. Meanwhile, Emily was struggling to keep her head above water. She had moved into a small apartment on the other side of town, far from the life she'd once known. Without Andrew to support her, she was forced to dip into her savings to pay rent, and her attempts to reconnect with Noah were met with polite but firm boundaries. One evening, she showed up at the house unannounced. "I just want to see him," she said, standing on the porch with tears in her eyes. "He's asleep," I said. "You can see him during your scheduled visitation." "Michael, please," she whispered, her voice breaking. I'm trying to be better." "Then keep trying," I said, closing the door in her face. I knew Andrew's pride would be his undoing. Despite everything, he still held on to the belief that he could rebuild his life, regain his reputation. So, when I heard he was trying to land a new job in another city, I made sure that didn't happen. Using Rebecca's connections, we sent the full recordings, texts, photos, everything to his prospective employers. The result was immediate. The job offer was rescinded, and Andrew was left with no options. But I wasn't done. With Linda's help, I filed a civil suit against Andrew for alienation of affection. It wasn't about the money. I knew he didn't have much left to take, but about the principle. The suit gained traction, further tarnishing his name in the community. By the time it was over, Andrew Blake was a shell of the man he had once been, broke, humiliated, and alone. Life moved on, slowly but surely. Noah and I settled into a new routine, one that felt lighter without the shadow of Emily's betrayal hanging over us. I threw myself into my work and made time to coach Noah's soccer team. My relationship with Rebecca grew stronger too. What had started as an unlikely partnership turned into a genuine friendship, and maybe something more. One evening, as we sat on my back porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon, she turned to me with a small smile. "You know, you're a lot stronger than you give yourself credit for," she said. I shrugged. "I just did what I had to do." "Maybe," she said, "but you also fought for what matters." "That's rare." I didn't respond, but her words stayed with me. Months later, Emily tried one last time to repair what couldn't be fixed. She showed up at Noah's soccer game, looking nervous and out of place. "Michael," she said after the game, catching me as I loaded our gear into the car. "Can we talk?" I glanced at Noah, who was sitting in the back seat, happily chatting with his teammates. "Make it quick." "I'm sorry," she said, her voice trembling. "For everything. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I needed to say it." I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no longing. Just emptiness. "I forgave you a long time ago," I said. "But that doesn't mean I'll forget." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I got in the car without another word and drove away. In the end, I didn't need revenge to heal. The poison, the lawsuits, the public humiliation, they were satisfying, but they weren't the reason I could finally move forward. It was Noah. It was knowing that, no matter what, I had protected him, given him the stable, loving home he deserved. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free.